Okay, so if this carving looks familiar, it's because it's the second of its kind. I was making this project a few weeks ago for a release, and an individual reached out after the first one sold, asking for a second one. Actually, a French man. So this one's headed to France in a bit. But I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you a couple of things about carving hair. I'd like to first point out a real quick little thing that I've created called the Vise method. I don't know why I've added the word method to make myself sound smarter than I am. But it's just this idea that you're kind of looking for specific shapes. And I've talked about that in recent videos, but let's just kind of get into what that looks like in, say, the beard, right? When you're carving a long folding beard. Now, it's kind of hard sometimes to parse through what all of the shapes are that you're looking for in a project like this. For years, I just sort of guessed at it. But now I kind of have a basic checklist of shapes that I'm kind of looking for. So I mentioned in a previous video about the Vise method. So if you've seen that, you can kind of see how it applies. The first thing I look for is an S shape. In wavy beard hair, you're going to see a lot of S shapes. And this is literally just taking a V tool or a veiner. In other words, a U-shaped tool. I'm trying to find a veiner. Here's a veiner. This sort of a thing. Focus. There it is. Sort of. Anyway, it's a U-shaped tool. You have to believe me. Focus isn't working, but I use a lot of these U-shaped tools. This is a 3mm veiner, or number 11. And I'll come in and I'll create these sort of S patterns. So notice the tool as I'm pushing through the wood. All right, I'm kind of going back and forth until I've created this kind of S shape. And then I'll go next to that S shape and I'll make another groove in the same way. And that creates a tuft of hair that's raised in an S form. And this is good because even straight hair has a bit of movement to it. And it's a big mistake that people make when they carve hair. They don't add enough movement even to straight hair. Now, as an example, if you want to look at the nearest friend or family member that you have with long straight hair, notice the wave, notice the movement in the hair, in the layering of the hair. Many of the times you'll see there is a bit of an S shape, even if it's less dramatic or looser than what I've represented here. A couple of other things, looking for layers, creating layers by using V shapes. I like to use V shapes because they kind of uncover layers beneath the surface layer. Kind of, in other words, creates depth in the piece. So when I say V shapes, I also mean it sort of loosely, if you will, kind of abstract in a sense that the V could be turned upside down. The V could be kind of misshapen and curved. The legs of the V, literally just the letter V, can kind of be moved around a bit. So in other words, I'm looking for, here's an example of a V right here, boom. Let me zoom in on this so you can see. Right, so I've kind of created a V here with the veiner coming in. There's the two legs and they meet together here. And again, what this does is it creates layers. So then when I push the inside part of this V in by using that veiner to kind of reduce the material on the inside of that V, look what I've done. I've created a section that layers beneath these two sections, which now come ahead of it. So this is how I get the look of depth and dynamic shape in facial hair, which is kind of always in my mind coming from the origin, which is something that a lot of people forget, and I forget it sometimes too, that you want to remember that the hair is coming from specific origins on the face. Right? And unless you've got the manliest beard, and a lot of guys have incredibly manly beards where it seems to come equally thickly from all portions of the chin area, the beard tends to grow thicker at the base of the chin. It grows thicker right beneath the lower lip. So you notice I've got a thicker tuft here. It grows more, thickly on the cheeks here in the middle cheek area or the mid cheek area, kind of further into the face. So I'm kind of thinking about that and carving these S curves and these V curves in those areas to kind of emphasize where the masses live. So really when I'm carving here, I'm thinking about material that I'm leaving behind, not so much the material that I'm cutting in. And that helps me to think a little bit more accurately as to what this is all about, which is I'm removing things that don't belong to reveal things beneath. And so yeah, I'm trying to kind of think about, well, how is this cut impacting the material surrounding it? Hopefully that helps. It's just a few things that I think about when I think about carving hair. and carving beard hair in particular. So I know a few folks have reached out about it. And in my school, I have an online school where I break down all this stuff in more detail. And I show you exactly how I carve all of these features in the same way that I've explained these concepts to you here. I kind of break down the face into simpler forms and how I execute realistic facial carving in that. So you can check that out if this interests you. I've also got free resources, and I do beginner type content on YouTube as well as on the school. Beginner, intermediate, and advanced stuff on fundamentals of wood carving. And I'll link that below as well for you folks to check out. But that said, there's my one big ad, right? That's what it seems like. But the goal here, again, is just to show you some highlights about carving hair, and then to let you guys know if you want to dive deeper that I have a resource for that. Without further ado, I'll let you go, get carving. I'm going to keep adding a little bit more detail, texture to this. One thing I'll say too, I like to leave a contrast and texture between the hair and the face. So notice the face is kind of smooth, sanded, riffled, or using a riffler or a file. And then I like to leave more texture in the beard. And it may take a little while to get the hang of it, but once you learn how to use the tool to create texture in the beard, I think it's a really nice contrast. All right, that's that.